David Harris never imagined his second chance at love would end in blood, betrayal, and headlines. At 38, he was a quiet, routine-loving bank manager in suburban Texas. Widowed 5 years earlier after losing his high school sweetheart to cancer, David had spent years picking up the pieces. He never thought he'd fall in love again, until Jasmine. They met on a dating app, a place David had always been skeptical of. But there was something about Jasmine's smile. She was striking, long, dark hair, expressive hazel eyes, and a soft voice that made him forget he was ever lonely. She told him she was 29, originally from Nevada, now working as a freelance graphic designer. Their relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months, Jasmine had charmed not just David, but his colleagues, his pastor, even his mother. She was sweet, attentive, intelligent, almost too perfect. But David, blinded by gratitude and longing, ignored the little voice that told him things were moving too fast. They were married in a small ceremony on a warm April afternoon. Jasmine wore a white satin gown that shimmered in the light. David, a simple navy suit and a look of nervous joy. Their vows were tender, intimate. The reception was filled with laughter and soft jazz. David thought he'd finally found peace again. That night, they checked into the Belmont Hotel, a boutique suite Jasmine had picked herself. Candlelight, rose petals, champagne. Everything was perfect, until it wasn't. It started with a kiss, then another. Passion, nervous laughter, and soft whispers. But as David began to undress Jasmine, something shifted. Her body tensed. Her hand stopped him. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling. David smiled gently. "What is it, babe?" I wasn't born Jasmine," she said. "I was born Jason." The silence that followed was absolute. David blinked, frozen. "I don't understand," he said slowly, stepping back. "I'm transgender," she whispered. "I haven't had all the surgeries yet. I was going to tell you. I didn't know how. I didn't want to lose you." He stared at her. His breathing changed. "You're telling me, on our wedding night, that you're a man?" "No," she replied quickly, desperately. "I'm a woman. I've always been a woman. Just not in the way you thought." David's heart pounded. His mind raced. The hotel suite suddenly felt claustrophobic, the candlelight suffocating. "You lied to me," he muttered. "For 6 months. I wanted to tell you," she said, eyes welling up. Please, I didn't mean to hurt you." David's voice rose. "You let me marry you. You let me stand in front of God and make vows, without telling me who you really are." "I'm who I said I am," she cried. "I love you. Everything I said, everything I felt, it was real." But David couldn't hear her anymore. His world had tilted violently. The woman he thought he loved wasn't who she said she was. And worse, she had waited until after the ceremony to confess the truth. In a blind mix of rage, confusion, and humiliation, David grabbed his jacket and stormed out of the suite. Jasmine ran after him barefoot, pleading with him not to leave, but he didn't look back. He drove through the night, parking eventually in a grocery store lot, sitting in the dark for hours, staring at the steering wheel, shaking. He didn't answer her calls. He didn't read her texts. He didn't want to see her ever again. But when he returned to the hotel the next morning, tired, empty, and unsure of what to do next, Jasmine was gone. Not just gone from the room, gone from the hotel, gone without a trace. No checkout, no suitcase, no purse, no digital trail. The front desk clerk said she was last seen going up the elevator around 11:15 p.m. And that was the last time anyone saw Jasmine Brooks alive. David stood motionless at the hotel suite doorway. The bed was perfectly made, as if no one had ever laid in it. Jasmine's dress was gone. Her shoes, her makeup bag, her phone vanished. The room was silent, sterile. Only a faint scent of jasmine perfume lingered in the air, like a cruel reminder she had actually been there. He checked the front desk first. The concierge, a young man named Trent, blinked at David's question. "Your wife?" "She already checked out. Around midnight, I think," Trent said, tapping a few keys on the monitor. "We didn't see her leave, though. She didn't go through the lobby." David frowned. "Then how did she check out?" Trent hesitated. "Well, she never formally did. But our housekeeping reported the room empty this morning. Guest must have left on her own. That didn't sit right." David called Jasmine's phone, straight to voicemail. He texted her, begging for answers, some kind of response. Nothing. By noon, he went to the police. At first, they treated it like a standard missing persons report. The officers asked if they had argued. He told them everything. The wedding night, the confession, his reaction. They raised their eyebrows, but said adults disappear all the time. "Maybe she was afraid you'd hurt her," one officer suggested flatly. David was stunned. "I walked out. I didn't touch her." Still, the tone shifted. The questions became pointed. Did he ever hit her before? Did they argue often? Had she expressed fear of him? David's heart sank. Somehow, he was being made to feel like the suspect. Detectives began looking into Jasmine's identity, and that's when the first red flag emerged. There was no record of her. No birth certificate under Jasmine Brooks. No driver's license. No employment records matching the information she had given David. What they did find was a person named Jason Brooks, born in Nevada, who had legally changed his name, but had no updated federal documents, no consistent employment, and a long string of aliases tied to different cities. That's when the tone of the investigation changed again. Now, it wasn't just a missing person case. It was a case involving possible fraud. And David? He was caught in the middle of it. 1 week later, David received a call from Detective Lena Parker. "We found something," she said. "You may want to come down to the station." When David arrived, he was met with grim faces. A hiker near Pinehurst Forest, 40 miles outside of town, had discovered a large suitcase partially buried near a trailhead. Inside was a body, badly decomposed but still wearing a piece of white satin fabric. Forensics later confirmed what David already knew in his gut. It was Jasmine. The autopsy ruled the cause of death as asphyxiation, manual strangulation. Defensive wounds were found on the hands and arms. Time of death estimated within 12 hours of their wedding night. David collapsed in his chair when they told him. Grief wasn't the right word. It was something colder, more hollow. And then came the final blow. "Mr. Harris," said Detective Parker, "your vehicle was seen on a traffic camera heading north toward Pinehurst that night, around 2 a.m. Can you explain that?" David's head snapped up. No, I drove around town. I didn't go near Pinehurst." Security footage from a gas station off Highway 12 shows a vehicle matching your make and model stopping for fuel. That's 15 minutes from the crime scene. "I didn't kill her," David said, panic rising in his throat. "I was angry, yes. Hurt. But I didn't touch her." But the evidence was mounting. Forensics had discovered a small bloodstain in the trunk of David's car, a match to Jasmine's DNA. Her phone last pinged near his home address before going dark. David was arrested that evening on suspicion of murder. As he sat in the interrogation room, staring at the mirror, handcuffed and exhausted, one question echoed louder than the rest. If he didn't kill her, who did? Because someone wanted Jasmine silenced. And someone was smart enough to make David look like the monster. For nearly 2 weeks, David Harris sat behind bars at the El Paso County Jail, charged with the murder of his wife, if that's who Jasmine really was. His mugshot had been plastered across evening news reports. Groom turns killer? They asked. His friends recoiled. His boss placed him on immediate unpaid leave. His own mother wouldn't return his calls. And yet, David sat there in the dark, replaying the wedding night over and over in his head, asking himself the same question the detectives had. Had he missed something? The answer came unexpectedly from a stranger. Detective Lena Parker, methodical and cool-headed, returned to David's cell one morning with a file in her hand and a new expression in her eyes, something between intrigue and disbelief. "We found your wife," she said slowly. "Not just her body. Her history." David sat up, hands trembling. "Her real name is Jason Brooks. Born in 1989 in Las Vegas. Jason legally changed his name to Jasmine Brooks in 2019. But that's just the start." She laid out the file. Inside were copies of past court documents, social media screenshots, driver's license applications, under 5 different names. 1 in Arizona, 2 in Florida, 1 in Georgia, and the most recent in New Mexico. Jasmine, had been running for years. Every time he changed names, he reinvented himself. New backstory, new job, new partner. There were no criminal convictions, but plenty of suspicious activity. Complaints from past landlords, restraining orders that were filed and then mysteriously withdrawn, and one particularly troubling death in Miami. "Who?" David whispered. "Martin Lowell, wealthy retiree, died in 2020. He and Jason were married for 4 months. Cause of death was ruled a heart attack, but Martin's sister believed otherwise. She said Jason was manipulating him, controlling his medication." David's mouth went dry. Jason's pattern was chilling. He'd enter the lives of lonely, wealthy older men, charm them, marry them quickly, and then either disappear or leave them broken. He was a ghost with a legal name. But there was more. "We also found a link to a man named Malik Carter," Lena added. "Former boyfriend. Based in New Mexico. Did he kill Jasmine?" David asked, his voice nearly cracking. "We don't know. Not yet. But here's what you need to see." She pulled out a printed email, dated 3 days before the wedding. It was from Jason and Malik. "I'm getting married. He's perfect, safe, boring, rich. I'll finally have stability. But if you ever open your mouth about what we did in Albuquerque, I swear I'll bury you with it." David's stomach turned. Malik was contacted for questioning. At first, he denied everything. Said he hadn't spoken to Jasmine in over a year. But under pressure, he admitted they had stayed in contact, off and on, ever since their breakup. He described Jason as intense, paranoid, and emotionally manipulative. He also admitted Jason had recently started blackmailing him. "He had stuff on me," Malik said. "Photos, messages, things I sent years ago when I was stupid." "And when did you last see Jasmine?" the detective asked. Malik hesitated. "The week before the wedding. He came to see me, said he wanted closure. We argued. He said if I didn't send him $10,000, he'd ruin me. That was motive, but not yet proof. What was proof came next, a trail of burner phones, one of which had pinged in both Malik's and Jasmine's vicinity 2 nights before the wedding. And then the DNA came back. A single blonde hair was found clenched in Jasmine's fist, not David's. Malik Carter, on the other hand, matched the profile. David was granted bail 2 days later. As he stepped outside the jail for the first time in weeks, his face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. The reporters shouted questions, but he said nothing. Because David wasn't free. He was just no longer the main suspect. He was no longer the main suspect. But what haunted David more than the arrest, the jail time, or the whispers in the courtroom, was this gnawing question. Who exactly had he married? He wanted to believe Jasmine was simply afraid, that she'd lied to survive, that she'd run from shame, not from guilt. But the more he uncovered, the less that theory held up. With help from his private investigator, David began piecing together Jasmine's early life, back when she was still Jason Brooks. Jason was born in 1989 in Shreveport, Louisiana. His mother, Lorraine, was a devout woman who worked 2 jobs to raise 3 children. His father, Derek Brooks, was a former Marine turned alcoholic who was known more for his fists than his words. Jason was the youngest, sensitive, quiet, and from a young age, noticeably different. In school, Jason was bullied for being too soft. In church, he was warned that God don't make mistakes, but you are one. By 13, Jason had begun wearing his sister's clothes in secret. At 15, his father beat him so badly after finding makeup in his backpack that he was hospitalized. Jason never returned home. He entered the foster care system and bounced between group homes, shelters, and temporary placements. At 16, he disappeared from the system entirely. No record of adoption. No forwarding address. That's when the name changing began. From Jason to Jayla. Jayla to Jasmine. Jasmine Brooks first appeared on a driver's license application in Atlanta, Georgia, with no stable home, no education, no support. Jason learned the only way to survive was to adapt, become who others wanted, and never let anyone close enough to see the real person behind the smile. The first recorded con came in 2014. A man named Bernard Ellis in Tampa filed a police report after his girlfriend, a woman named Jasmine, took off with $18,000 from his joint account. The case was closed due to lack of evidence. Bernard never saw her again. The second case was Martin Lowell in Miami. Older, wealthy, retired, and dead. Jason married Martin under the name Jasmine Brooks in 2020. They were together just 4 months before Martin died of a sudden cardiac event. But Martin's sister, Elaine, always suspected foul play. She claimed Martin's medications were being tampered with, that Jasmine refused an autopsy, that a new will appeared only days before his death, leaving everything to Jasmine, who disappeared 2 days after the funeral. David read these reports in stunned silence. It wasn't just that Jasmine had a past. It was that she had perfected the art of disappearing into other people's dreams, then vanishing with their money, or worse. But amid all the con artistry and cold calculation, there were cracks. Handwritten letters recovered from one of Jasmine's old apartments revealed a person battling demons no one saw. If I'd been born different, maybe I'd be good enough to stay. Sometimes I forget who I even am. I'll look in a mirror and see every man who ever tried to fix or break me. I lie because the truth never got me anything but pain. David sat in his apartment, rereading those lines, letting the silence stretch like a confession. He no longer hated her. He pitied her. She wasn't just a liar. She was a survivor who'd turned survival into performance, and performance into pathology. And for the first time, he wondered, did Jasmine want to get caught? Was the wedding night confession, telling the truth after all that deception, a way to finally end it? To burn down the house she'd built from false walls and fractured trust? And somewhere out there, Malik Carter was unraveling. The forest didn't give up its secrets easily. Pinehurst, a dense stretch of woods about an hour outside El Paso, had always been a place where people went to disappear, figuratively and literally. Hunters, hikers, runaways. And now, Jasmine Brooks. It took 2 full days for the forensic team to properly excavate the scene. The suitcase had been buried in a shallow grave beneath a collapsed tree, zipped shut, wrapped in plastic. Inside, a body curled in a fetal position. White satin clung to pale skin like wet paper. The cause of death was confirmed, manual strangulation, but the post-mortem detail chilled everyone on site. Whoever had killed Jasmine had wrapped the body with care. There were no signs of panic, no signs of a rushed disposal. It was deliberate, almost ritualistic. And that wasn't all. Near the site, partially buried beneath leaves, was a pair of gloves, leather, black, with faint traces of blood around the wrist. Forensics pulled DNA. It wasn't David's. It was Malik Carter's. Detectives brought him in again, this time not for questioning, but for a formal interrogation. Malik walked in khaki. Sunglasses, clean-shaved denim jacket zipped to the chin. But when they placed the gloves on the table and slid a photo of the suitcase across to him, the facade cracked. "I don't know what you think this proves," he said, voice shaking. "So my DNA's in the woods. I used to hike there. It's not a crime." Detective Parker leaned forward. "The gloves were found buried 10 feet from Jasmine's body, with your DNA inside and her blood on the wrist." Silence. Malik blinked, then exhaled. "Look, I didn't kill him. I mean her. Jasmine. I didn't." The detectives waited. Let the silence build. Malik folded. Not fully, but just enough. "She came to me," he muttered, "before the wedding. Said she needed a safety net. That if things didn't work out with a new guy, David, she wanted to have options. She was always like that, playing both sides." He leaned back. "But I swear I didn't kill her. We argued. I left. That's it. It wasn't enough. But it was something." The district attorney wasn't ready to press charges. Not yet. Not with circumstantial evidence. Not with someone as media-sensitive as a transgender victim and 2 male suspects. The narrative had to be airtight. So they dug deeper. And then they found the burner phone. At the bottom of a storm drain in Albuquerque, maintenance workers recovered a water-damaged cell phone during routine cleaning. Weeks earlier, they might have thrown it away. But now, with the Jasmine Brooks case all over the news, they turned it in. The forensics lab dried it out, rebuilt the chip, and when they accessed the text logs, what they found turned the case on its head. There were dozens of messages between Jasmine and Malik, most of them angry, some sexual, a few threatening. "You don't get to control me anymore. If I go down, I'm taking you with me. I told David everything. Let's see how he reacts." But then, one message, timestamped 2 hours before Jasmine's estimated time of death. "If I show up dead, it won't be David. It'll be you. And I'll make sure they know it." Malik was arrested the next morning. This time, there were no sunglasses, no denim jacket, just silence and handcuffs. At the press conference, Detective Parker kept her voice measured. "We believe Mr. Carter acted out of desperation and fear. Ms. Brooks was threatening to expose him, not just for past actions, but for his current relationship, which we've now learned involved an underage boy in Arizona. That's why Jasmine had leverage. That's why she ended up dead. David Harris sat at home watching the news alone. Free, yes, but not okay. How could he be? He had fallen in love with someone who didn't exist, been betrayed, accused of murder, jailed, shamed, and now, the person he once thought would be his new beginning had become his darkest chapter. His name had been cleared, but his life was far from intact. He would later tell a journalist. "It wasn't the lie that broke me. It was the silence that followed, the way she vanished without a word, the way I'll never get answers. That's the part I'll carry forever." And still, one question lingered. Was Malik Carter the only one Jasmine had threatened? Or were there more secrets still buried in the woods? The answer didn't come from the forest. It came from a vanity mirror. While clearing out Jasmine's storage unit, locked and paid up for a year in advance under the name Jayla Morris, detectives discovered a vintage makeup case with a false bottom. Hidden inside was a small black USB drive taped to a folded sheet of paper. The note, typed and unsigned, read, "If anything happens to me, don't believe what they say. Start with this." They sent the USB to the lab. What it contained would reignite the investigation and force everyone to reconsider what kind of danger Jasmine Brooks had really been in. Inside were 12 audio files for video clips and a document labeled pattern.txt. The audio files were raw, sometimes muffled, sometimes whispered. Jasmine had clearly recorded them in secret, during late-night conversations, phone calls, confrontations. Some were with David, others with unknown men. And then there was one with Malik Carter. Audio file 006, transcript excerpt. Jasmine, I'm not scared of you anymore. Malik, you should be. You think you're smart? Think you could just walk away? Jasmine, I've got everything backed up. You lay a finger on me, and you're finished. Malik, you go to the cops, and I'll tell them what you did in Albuquerque. You think anyone's going to see you as the victim? Silence. Jasmine, quietly, then we'll both burn. The video clips were even more chilling. One showed Malik and Jasmine at a motel in Albuquerque. Their conversation grainy but clear. Malik was visibly agitated, pacing, fists clenched. Jasmine, calm but firm, held her phone out like a shield. Another video was from a GoPro hidden inside a handbag, recorded during a car ride. Malik's voice filled the cabin. I could snap your neck right now, and no one would care. You think anyone gives a damn what happens to people like you? That line would become the centerpiece of the renewed prosecution. But the most shocking file was the text document. Pattern.txt contained a detailed outline. Names, dates, tactics Jasmine had observed in abusive relationships she'd been in. Some of the entries described men previously unknown to investigators. Others matched police reports from other states. Incidents of domestic violence where the victim never pressed charges. In short, Jasmine had been building a case. Quietly, carefully, almost obsessively. But why? Detective Monique Parker, who had stayed on the case, believed Jasmine feared she would never be believed. As a transgender black woman with a criminal record and a history of manipulation, she knew that the system wouldn't protect her. So she did the only thing she could. She documented everything. Parker took the file straight to the DA's office. ADA Kendra Bryant reviewed them in stunned silence. The audio and video not only strengthened the murder charge against Malik Carter, they completely shifted the courtroom narrative. Jasmine was no longer just a manipulator with a shady past. She was a whistleblower who died trying to protect herself. Meanwhile, David Harris watched it all unfold from the outside. He hadn't spoken publicly since the trial, hadn't given a single interview. But when Detective Parker called and asked if he'd review some of Jasmine's files, he agreed. He sat in the small conference room at the station, headphones on, listening to Jasmine's voice. Strong, scared, fierce, exhausted. And in that moment, he saw her, not as Jasmine, not as Jason, not even as the person who lied to him, but as someone who had been fighting for her life long before they ever met. He left the station without a word. That night, he opened her final letter again. And this time, he didn't stop reading at the apology. He turned the page and saw a second message he hadn't noticed before. If anything happens to me, check the pink makeup case. I didn't just lie to you, David. I lied to protect myself. From men like Malik. From men like the ones before him. I wanted to believe you were different. And maybe you were. The USB drive changed everything. In court, it would become Exhibit number 43, the linchpin that would shift public sympathy, anchor motive, and reframe the entire case. But more than that, it was Jasmine's final act of agency. She didn't get justice in life, but in death, she left a trail no one could ignore. She didn't get justice in life, but in death, she left a trail no one could ignore. Within a week of the USB drive's discovery, the DA's office filed a motion to reopen the trial proceedings against Malik Carter, citing new material evidence. The judge granted the request, allowing the jury to reconvene with limited scope, to review the newly submitted exhibits and evaluate their impact on the original case. It was rare, unusual, and electric. Inside the courtroom, journalists scrambled for front-row seats. The public had already begun to see Jasmine Brooks not as a seductress or scam artist, but as a woman who fought to be heard and was silenced for it. Malik Carter sat stone-faced at the defense table. His legal team looked tense, flipping through printed transcripts from the USB files. They knew what was coming. ADA Kendra Bryant took her time building the new case framework. She didn't shout. She didn't dramatize. Instead, she let Jasmine speak for herself. Audio after audio played. Jasmine's voice, sometimes shaking, sometimes defiant, filled the courtroom. Her fear became real. Her pain undeniable. One juror, who had originally voted for a lesser charge, wiped tears from her eyes during the third recording. And then came the video. Malik's threats were clear. So was Jasmine's resolve. She wasn't running anymore. She had been preparing for war. Still, it wasn't just the evidence that turned the tide. It was the next witness. A bailiff called his name. Jordan Brooks, please take the stand. Heads turned. No one recognized him. David sat up in his seat. A young man, early 30s, stepped forward. Clean-cut, quiet, wearing a dark gray blazer. He adjusted the microphone and nodded slightly toward the judge. State your relationship to the victim, ADA Bryant said gently. Jasmine Brooks was my older sibling. Before she transitioned, I knew her as my brother Jason. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. When was the last time you saw her? About 3 months before her death. She reached out to me after years. Jordan paused, taking a breath. I wasn't a good brother. When she came out, I turned my back on her, just like our parents. I told myself it wasn't my business, that she was choosing a life that would get her hurt, and I didn't want to watch. He swallowed hard. But that day, when she called me out of nowhere, her voice was shaking. She said she didn't know who to trust, that she had things, documents, recordings. She said if anything happened to her, the truth would come out. Did she name anyone? She said she was scared of Malik Carter, and someone else from her past she wouldn't name. She said she had files, and she was finally ready to expose everything. Why didn't you go to the police then? Jordan blinked. Because I was ashamed. Because I was afraid she'd hang up and disappear again. Do you believe she was in danger? I believe she knew she wouldn't survive much longer. His testimony shook the jury. It was the emotional core the case had lacked. Not just what happened, but what it meant. That Jasmine hadn't just died. She had predicted her own death. She had tried to outsmart it. And in the end, she had trusted the wrong person one last time. In closing arguments, ADA Bryant didn't paint Malik as a monster. She painted Jasmine as a mirror, reflecting everything broken about the systems meant to protect people like her. She was failed by family, church, the law, and the men she tried to love. Jasmine Brooks didn't live a perfect life, Bryant said, but she lived a brave one, and she died because she chose, finally, to stop running. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. They returned with a new verdict. Guilty. Malik Carter was convicted of second-degree murder with aggravating factors and sentenced to 35 years in prison without parole. He didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He just stared at the table, motionless, as if the weight of Jasmine's voice was still echoing in his ears. Outside the courthouse, candles were lit. A memorial went up with a photo of Jasmine smiling, arms open, captioned with her own words from the USB. I may not be perfect, but I'm not afraid to be seen anymore. 6 months later, the trial of Malik Carter opened to a packed courtroom and a storm of media attention. From the outside, it had all the makings of a modern tragedy, one that blurred the lines between love, deception, identity, and violence. At the center of it all was a woman who had lived as a man, married 2 of them, and left behind a trail of fear, manipulation, and ultimately death. But inside the courtroom, this wasn't a Netflix documentary. It was real, cold, procedural. And for David Harris, seated in the 3rd row with a court-issued subpoena and a 1,000-yard stare, It was personal. Malik Carter pled not guilty to second-degree murder. His defense team argued that Jasmine Brooks had psychologically abused and blackmailed him for years, and that the evidence against him was circumstantial. They painted him as a man pushed to the edge by a toxic, unstable figure who had destroyed lives, not just his. But the prosecution wasn't buying it. Assistant District Attorney Meredith Sloan opened with a chilling summary. The defendant didn't act out of fear. He acted out of calculation. He killed Jasmine Brooks because she was about to reveal something that would destroy him, and he made sure she never would. She called David Harris to the stand first. David's testimony was calm, controlled, but his pain was obvious. He recounted the wedding night, how Jasmine had confessed she was transgender, how he'd left in a storm of disbelief, and how she was gone by morning. Then came the defense's cross-examination. Mr. Harris, did you ever threaten Jasmine? No. Did you ever raise your voice to her? I was upset. I said things, but I never threatened her. Did you, at any point, consider harming her? David's eyes narrowed. No. I wanted answers, not revenge. The jury listened, some leaning forward, some stealing glances at Malik. But it was the second witness who flipped the courtroom upside down. Her name was Shanice Wallace, a former roommate of Jasmine from Miami and the ex-girlfriend of Martin Lowell, Jasmine's late husband. Shanice claimed she had witnessed multiple instances of manipulation, including how Jasmine had altered Martin's medications, lied about legal documents, and even boasted once, "Men fall for who they think I am." That's all that matters. It painted a much darker picture of the victim, one that made jurors shift uncomfortably in their seats. But the prosecution wasn't shaken. They pivoted hard with their star evidence, the burner phone. A digital forensics expert took the stand and outlined, piece by piece, the messages Jasmine sent Malik in the days before her death, the threats, the leverage, the demands, and finally, the chilling last text. If I show up dead, it won't be David. It'll be you, and I'll make sure they know it. But just when it seemed like the trial was settling into its final stretch, another twist surfaced, this time from the deceased. One of Jasmine's old email accounts had recently been unlocked by investigators. Inside were hundreds of messages, archived in hidden folders. One folder, labeled failsafes, contained audio recordings, personal memos Jasmine had recorded, documenting her own fears and plans. In one recording, dated 2 weeks before the wedding, Jasmine said, "I think Malik is cracking. He's paranoid, watching me all the time. He says if I marry David, he's going to go to the police about what happened in Albuquerque. But that's not going to happen. If I can push him just enough, just the right pressure, he'll snap. And when he does, I'll finally be free of him." The courtroom fell silent. Jasmine wasn't just afraid. She was orchestrating a psychological trap, baiting Malik to implode. It backfired. When Malik heard the recording played aloud, he broke. In front of the judge, the jury, the cameras, he snapped. "She wanted me to lose everything," he shouted, rising to his feet. "She said I was disgusting, that I'd never be loved by anyone but her, that if I didn't pay, she'd ruin me. I begged her to stop." He turned toward the judge. "I didn't mean to kill her. I just wanted her to shut up, just for a second, just to stop." The courtroom exploded in murmurs. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly. But the damage was done. Malik had confessed before the jury, in open court. The next day, he accepted a plea deal, 25 years in prison for second-degree murder. As the courtroom emptied, David Harris remained seated for a long time. His name was cleared, his freedom restored. But what he had lost couldn't be counted in years or headlines. It was trust. It was innocence. It was the belief that love, no matter how broken, couldn't kill. And as he walked out of the courthouse into a Texas sky dark with rain, he whispered, "I didn't lose her. I lost myself. I didn't lose her. I lost myself. But even that wasn't the end. A week after David Harris buried Jasmine's final letter beneath the crooked pine tree in Pinehurst Forest, he received an email. No subject line. No sender name. Just an attachment. j.brooks_final.mov. He hesitated before opening it. His fingers hovered over the trackpad. He told himself not to watch it. Told himself he didn't need more closure or more pain. But Jasmine had always been the one to leave loose ends that demanded to be followed. The video began with static. Then Jasmine appeared, seated in front of a small vanity mirror, dressed in a soft green robe, barefaced, hair tied up. She looked tired, not scared, just still. "If you're seeing this," she said quietly, "then I guess I didn't make it out." Her voice didn't shake. "I always thought I could outrun my past. Outwit the men who try to control me. Outsmart the world that kept telling me I was wrong. Wrong body, wrong name, wrong everything. But the truth is, I've been scared since I was a kid. And somewhere along the way, fear turned into armor, into lies." She inhaled. "I lied to David. I lied to the people who loved me. But I also tried to protect myself in the only ways I knew how. And maybe that makes me selfish. Or maybe it just makes me human." She looked away for a moment, then back. "To the ones I hurt, I'm sorry. And to the ones who hurt me, I hope you never sleep easy again. But to the girl I used to be, the one who thought she'd never be seen, I want to say this. You made it. For a little while, you made it." The screen faded to black, and David, silent, unmoving, closed his laptop. Later that month, he met Jordan Brooks at a quiet cafe outside the city. It was awkward at first. The two men barely knew what to say. They ordered coffee, avoided eye contact, and sat in silence until Jordan finally broke it. "She used to sing in church, you know." David looked up. "Jason, when we were kids. She had this voice, big for someone so small. But when she came out, my mom said it was a demon. And my dad, he trailed off. I should have stood up for her." David didn't say anything. He just nodded. Jordan reached into his jacket and handed David a small box. Inside was a gold necklace with a charm shaped like a mirror. "She gave this to me the night she showed up. Said it was for the day I stopped being ashamed of knowing her." David closed the box. "Maybe it's time you wear it." Jordan shook his head. "No, I think she meant it for you." It was a month after the trial ended when the letter arrived. There was no return address, just David Harris's name written in a soft, slanted hand on a plain white envelope. The paper had a faint lavender scent. For a brief second, David froze, heart hammering in his chest. He recognized the handwriting instantly. It was Jasmine's. He opened it slowly, hands trembling. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed, not handwritten. Crisp. Clean. Final. "David, if you're reading this, it means things didn't go the way I hoped. Maybe I'm dead. Maybe you're free. Or maybe both. There's no easy way to explain why I did what I did. I wish I could tell you that I planned to be honest, that I wanted to come clean before the wedding. But that wouldn't be true. The truth is messier than that. I didn't lie to hurt you. I lied because I didn't believe I was worthy of someone like you. Not with my past. Not with the things I've done. I lied because I was afraid you'd see me, all of me, and walk away. You always deserved more than I could give. But you gave me something I never had before. Peace. Even if it was only for a little while. I'm sorry for everything. Jay." David read the letter 3 times. Then he sat in silence for what felt like hours. He should have felt closure, relief. But what he felt was something else entirely, an ache deeper than anger, deeper than betrayal. It was mourning. For Jasmine. For Jason. For the version of himself that believed love was simple, clean, and safe. After the trial, David tried to put the pieces back together. He moved out of his house, sold his car, cut off contact with most people he once knew. He told reporters he didn't want to be remembered as the man who married a lie. But the truth was, he didn't want to remember anything at all. He started seeing a therapist, weekly sessions, short walks, long silences, and still, Jasmine lingered in the headlines, in late-night podcasts, in documentaries with titles like The Groom, The Lie, and The Forest. Everyone wanted to talk about her. No one wanted to understand her. One rainy evening, David drove out to Pinehurst, the forest where Jasmine's body had been found. He stood at the edge of the trail, watching mist roll between the trees like breath. He pulled the letter from his coat pocket. Read it again. Then he folded it, placed it inside a mason jar, and buried it beneath the old, crooked pine. He didn't say a prayer. He didn't cry. He just whispered, "Goodbye." And that was the last time anyone ever heard David Harris speak about Jasmine Brooks. Epilogue. 1 year later. Malik Carter now resides at the Texas Correctional Facility in Livingston. He spends most of his days in the prison library, avoiding eye contact with other inmates. He's currently petitioning for early parole on claims of psychological trauma. His request has been denied twice. Detective Lena Parker received an award for her work on the case, but later transferred departments, citing emotional exhaustion. She no longer investigates homicide. The burner phone, the email recordings, the falsified documents, everything related to Jasmine's past, now sits in a locked evidence box at the El Paso County Courthouse. As for Jasmine, or Jason, or whoever they truly were, no other confirmed victims have come forward. But online forums buzz with speculation. Some believe Jasmine had accomplices. Others think she was planning one final score and got caught in her own game. But those are just theories. The facts remain. A wedding night, a missing bride, a twisted past, a body in a suitcase, and a truth that no one, not even the dead, could keep buried forever. It was 3 weeks after the documentary premiered when David received a letter with a Louisiana postmark. The handwriting was shaky, the ink smudged in places. "Mr. Harris, my name is Lorraine Brooks. I believe you knew my child." There was no phone number, just an address scrawled beneath the signature. David sat with the letter for 3 days before deciding to go. He didn't know what he was expecting. Anger, shame, denial. Jasmine had spoken very little about her mother, only that she had once thrown a Bible at her feet and told her to never come back. But when Lorraine opened the door, David was stunned. She looked nothing like the cold, bitter woman he had imagined. Her hair was silver, tied back with a scarf. Her eyes were tired. She walked with a cane and held a tissue that never seemed to leave her hand. "I knew you'd come," she said. Inside, the house was quiet, almost frozen in time. Faded family portraits hung on the wall. One of them was Jason, age 10, grinning in a football jersey. "He loved that photo," Lorraine said, eyes fixed on it. "Used to beg me not to cut it out of the album." David nodded, but didn't speak. "When Jason became Jasmine, I told myself I'd lost a son. What I didn't realize was I was losing a daughter too. Not because of who she was, but because I wouldn't open the damn door." She sat down slowly. "She wrote me letters, every year. I never read them. Just shoved them in a drawer like they'd burn me alive." David pulled a folded envelope from his pocket. "She wrote me too." Lorraine took it with shaking hands. "Sometimes I wonder if she forgave me. Other times, I wonder if she should have." David looked around. There on the mantel stood a small framed photo of Jasmine. It was the same photo from the memorial, her smile wide, her eyes defiant. Next to it, a candle burned low. A week later, Jordan Brooks organized a private memorial at a local LGBTQ+ center. No cameras, no media, just 20 or so people, friends, former classmates, shelter staff, and a few strangers who had followed Jasmine's story and felt compelled to say goodbye. Jordan read a short poem. Shanice Wallace spoke about Jasmine's ability to adapt to find light in a room that never wanted her there. Lorraine sat quietly in the back row, clinging to her cane. David didn't speak. He didn't stand. But as the ceremony ended and candles were lit, he walked to the front and placed something beneath the photo, the gold necklace shaped like a mirror, the one Jasmine had once given her brother. He didn't look back, and when Lorraine approached him later, she whispered, "Thank you for loving the parts of her I never got to see." Back in Pinehurst Forest, the mason jar beneath the crooked pine remained where David had buried it. But now, if someone were to dig it up, they would find something new inside. A second letter. No signature. No explanation. Just 5 words scrawled in plain ink. You were always worth knowing. If this story moved you, or made you think twice about what we call justice, let us know in the comments. What would you have done in David's shoes? Could you have forgiven Jasmine? Or Malik? We read every comment, and your voice matters here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more true stories that are as real as they are haunting. New episodes every week. Stay safe, stay curious, and as always, thank you for watching.